Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Jordan, can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Okay. Thumbs up. Can you hear me okay? All right. Feel bad for everyone in front of me. We got the speaker right in the face. Well, welcome out. We're thrilled to be here in Washington City for the state of Washington City. And there, got it. 6 feet. We all know 6 feet distance, right? So keep your 6 feet away from the speaker to be good. I'd like to welcome everyone out. We're thrilled to be here in Washington City. This is a unique and awesome opportunity for our chamber to really embody the area that we serve. So in the past, we just used to do the state of the city and St. George City. But last year, we decided we wanted to expand. We wanted to incorporate all of our area cities and ensure that our businesses, our members, have the opportunity to hear from each of our area mayors, from representatives, city council people, and staff in each of our area cities to know what's happening and to know what their vision is for the future. As businesses, having that information is so critical for our planning and for us to grow our businesses in meaningful ways. So we're thrilled to be here. Thanks for the partnership with the city on this, and we appreciate everyone coming out today. I would like to invite Councilwoman Casperson to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And as she walks up, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We got quite a few new faces that I know like you guys, so I do want to just introduce myself. My name is Snob. I'm the President and CEO of the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce. Jordan Best in the back, raise your hand. Jordan is our Vice President of Member Services. So it's great to see some new faces, some that we haven't seen before. We look forward to today. Just a few announcements that I do want to make. First of all, I want to recognize our St. George Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Board of Governors, Sunshiners, and our committee leads. If you'll stand up and be recognized, these are the people who make the chamber work. So please join me in giving them a round. Of course, the always reminder that typically you're asked to put your phones away. We want you to pull your phones out. So we leave them on the table. Take pictures of Mayor Staley all throughout this presentation. Post it out, man. He looks great. He's so handsome, right? Like he's such a good face on social media. So take lots of pictures, post about this, share this so that other businesses can have information too to make decisions, and to hear the awesome things that are happening currently and are going to happen under his leadership and leadership of the council as well. A few other events just to call your attention to. Our Chamber 101 is happening tomorrow morning. For those who have been in the Chamber for a long time, but still don't know what we do, come to that. It's good for you, and for all of our new members or those who aren't even members of the Chamber, we invite you to come. It's 8:30 a.m. at the Chamber building. We have free Chick-fil-A for you, so don't worry, we got you covered there. But it's an hour presentation about everything the Chamber does. So you'll get the ins and outs, how to leverage that membership, really how to make the most of it. And then our next state of the city, and our final state of the city, will be in Santa Clara on February 23rd. So next Wednesday, that'll be our last one. That rounds out our 4 area cities of St. George, Ivins, Washington, and Santa Clara. So we hope you'll join us for that as well to hear what's happening over there. Our family night is happening on February 24th. That will be at DSU. We've got our awesome DSU table over here. Basketball, men's basketball. We invite you to join us. Register for all these on our chamber website, chamber.com. And then our next service project on the 25th. So just book out that whole week for chamber stuff. Okay, 23rd, 24th, 25th. 25th is our service project with our chamber service committee. We'll be teaming up with Love Where You Live, and we'll be doing trash cleanup. How many bags did we collect last time? How many pounds, Donna, Josh, remember? 1,700 pounds of trash off of our local roadways. So we invite you to join us for that. It's just a great way to get out with your team. You don't have to plan it, you just got to show up, and we'll have watermelon, water, other things for you. We have melted and that left in a cooler for about a week in the chamber. We are not using those, I'll tell you that. So, and those are our announcements for today. We have some special presentations we'd like to do as well. I'd like to invite Chamber Board Member Kelly Charlton to come up and to our first award presentation.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everyone here. Am I too loud? Perfect. Mayor Staley asked me to introduce one of two Perpetual Recognition Awards to you today. Both recognition awards will be delivered at his State of the City presentation each year while he is the mayor of Washington City. The first will be called the American Trailblazer Award. Each year, Mayor Staley will select a homegrown man or woman who, through the entrepreneurial spirit, has changed Washington City for the better. Someone who has built a business that leaves a legacy of giving back. Someone who constantly pays it forward. A person who understands or understood what it means to be a true community member. The trailblazer who may not have cleared the way, but who laid pavement for others to follow in his wake. With the deepest reverence, it is my absolute pleasure to present the first annual American Trailblazer recognition today. Once upon a time, a child was born. He was the second child and the oldest boy. Born to a wonderful family. He was a typical kid, smart, silly, funny, a genuine boy, and as Chris Staley told me, he ran the fields and played in the river. But this boy was also kind and thoughtful and honorable. As he grew into a man, he grabbed a hold of that smart gene. The silly became challenges to all of his buddies, and his jokes, God bless him, were the epitome of dad jokes. But that kind, thoughtful, honorable man also became a visionary. He bought a business from his dad and his mom. He took that vision and expanded the business. And then he expanded the business again. And finally, a few years later, Stapley Pharmacy business expanded one more time. When he unexpectedly passed away in February of 2019, many people, and I cannot tell you how many of them there were, told us of the kindness they had experienced with Brad. The assistance in purchasing prescriptions when they couldn't afford medicine for their ailing child, the late night or Sunday trips to the pharmacy to make sure that a patient had the medication they needed when they needed it, the help with words of encouragement as people were starting businesses, and as we found later, sometimes even a substantial donation to a business venture. No one really knows how many community members he helped, or even potentially how many businesses he helped start. He eventually became involved in lobbying on behalf of legislative issues that community pharmacies faced. But the real truth here is that this man constantly paid it forward, and with zero ego, he believed that his success was community success. This man was Brad Stapley, a homegrown boy who grew up in Washington City when Washington City was just a tiny city on the outskirts of St. George. His vision, his dedication to family and community, his ability to make a connection to everyone he came in contact with is the reason that he is the mayor's choice for the very first American Trailblazer recognition. And today I am honored to present this 2022 American Trailblazer recognition to his widow, Janice Stapley.
to now invite Councilman Kaib to join us, and he will be presenting the next award. Please come up.
I was Brad's 5th grade teacher. So I can tell you, I'd like to tell you a story about him, but he was just as good as a 10-year-old. I appreciate everyone being here today. Appreciate the leadership of our wonderful mayor, fellow council members that are here, my friends that I serve with, and others that I live with. I appreciate you being here. There's great things going on in Washington City. When I was just a youth, I would come to Washington and I noticed something right away, that in Washington years ago, there was a day to do wash and there was a day to burn trash. And those days were strategic. I was with my sister one time and she hadn't got her laundry down the night before. And we were hurrying to get home before the burning started. When we pulled in, there was no laundry on the line. And so she's a little curious. We walk in the house, and all of her laundry was not only off the line, but it was folded neatly on the kitchen table. A neighbor had done this. I knew I shouldn't talk about this. That's what makes our community great. We can do all that we can outwardly, but if we're not looking inwardly at our citizens and what grows our community, and that is service. Today, it is my honor to make our mayor's next presentation. The success of a city depends heavily on its residents. The lifeblood of a city are those who roll up their sleeves, lift where they stand, serve their neighbors, and leave a lasting impact on the people around them. Jerry Allred is one of those people. Jerry began his service as a Washington City volunteer firefighter in October 2000. In April of 2007, he was promoted to captain in the volunteer ranks. Eventually, Washington City started a part-time program, and Jerry was one of the first to sign up. As someone who always strives for excellence, Jerry completed numerous certifications, including Advanced EMT, Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, Hazardous Materials Technician, Fire Instructor 1, and Apparatus Driver Operator. Jerry has given thousands of volunteer hours to Washington City, thousands of hours training and responding to emergency calls. Jerry exemplifies what it means to be a public servant. He has spent decades making Washington City a safe and wonderful place to live. It is an honor for me to present him the Mayor's Award for Public Service for 2022. Jerry, if you'd come up. Thank you.
That's going to be an amazing tradition going forward, Mayor. It's awesome that you're doing that. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you for his first stint in the city, Mayor Chris Staley. Mayor Staley was born and raised in Washington City, Utah, and as the youngest of 4 boys, he graduated from Pineview High School and later from Southern Utah University with a degree in accounting. And he served 8 years for the Utah Army National Guard, 2 years as a missionary in France. A good house of friends. Good stuff. Okay. We taught our kids more than us. Didn't go over well. Too much. He currently works as an insurance and financial service agent, has done so for 20 years with the same company. He and his wife Lynette have been married for 25 years and are the parents of a son and 3 daughters. Mayor Staley previously served for 2 years on the Planning Commission and 6 years on the City Council. He loves his community, is committed to representing the best interests of Washington City and all who live here. He appreciates a heritage of hard work and commitment that it took to settle this desert community. He welcomes new and long-term residents to be involved in making Washington City even better as they grow. And his top priorities include being transparent and fair with growth and development, overseeing the budget with prudence and care, planning for the future and improving the quality of life. And in my few years that I've been able to observe and to work with the mayor, city councilman, and mayor, now in this capacity, I can attest to the integrity that this man has and his care and concern that he has, not just for this community, but even outside this community. I've worked with a lot of elected officials across the state of Utah, and he's in the top echelon of those elected officials, and has really proven himself through my observation and through his work, which I think is extremely impressive. So please join me in welcoming Mayor Chris Staley.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it. How do you follow that? Thank you, everyone. You know, taking the road, or taking the wheel as mayor of Washington City, has gotten me thinking about roads, both figuratively and literally. I can't help but glance in the rearview mirror with gratitude for the public service of the many who have gone before me, and who have done so much for what was once a sleepy little cotton town in an overlooked corner of the state, often referred to as Dixie, for longer than Utah has been a state. At the same time, I'm wise enough to know that it's dangerous to look solely in the rearview mirror, and that if we're going to face the challenges ahead, that we need to look through the front windshield. So while we often concern ourselves with federal issues, and rightfully so, as these certainly affect our lives in many ways, it's also important that we consider the state and municipal issues that we face locally. Often municipal issues have an even greater impact on our local quality of life. So that is why, as a mayor and council, one of the first things we did was a road trip. And that road trip was to the Capitol, where we met with our Senate and House representatives, and even had the opportunity to meet with Governor Cox. So I want to take a moment to recognize each of our council members and those in attendance today: Councilman Kurt Ivey, Councilman Brett Henderson, Councilwoman Kim Casperson. Each of our council members bring such a variety of background and experience and perspective that it really makes it a great working environment for each of us to work together. I'd also like to recognize our new city manager, Jeremy Redd, and all of our city staff who are here. We recognize and appreciate the hard work you do on behalf of the city and on behalf of all the residents. The work you do is appreciated, and it's vital. I'd also like to just take a moment to recognize President Williams from Dixie State University. Appreciate you making the time to be here today. And also Kyle Kay, CEO of Huntsman World Senior Games. It means a lot that you would be here. So the road to Washington was not easy. In fact, it began in the 1850s with Parley P. Pratt and John D. Lee, who were part of advanced parties who were sent south by Brigham Young to take a look at the landscape and the viability of the resources and the opportunities in this part of what wasn't then a country, but of this part of the land. Reports came back specifically from John D. Lee that the Rio Virgin Basin in this area had water and soil that would be conducive, in addition to a climate that would be conducive to raising and growing cotton. As word got back to the Salt Lake area, It was Brigham Young who, by 1857, determined that he would establish what was called, what would be the Cotton Mission. The Cotton Mission included early pioneers who would come from southern states like Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee, who had come through Nauvoo, who had come west in the late 1840s, early 1850s, and who had settled in the Salt Lake Basin. He asked them to uproot their families and to travel south. And the road was difficult, particularly as they entered into the Black Ridge area. You can imagine ox-pulled wagons laden with all of your belongings trying to navigate lava rock and steep inclines, to the extent that in some cases they would tie juniper trees to the backs of their wagons just to slow them down so they didn't burn their brakes. In some cases, in particularly what is referred to as Peter Leap, they actually unhooked the livestock and used ropes as they descended that Black Ridge area. It was quite the road, if you even dare call it a road. As they started to get into the lower area of the basin, in the Leeds area, it flattened out and wasn't as rocky, but they were introduced to the red sand that sometimes finds its way into our shoes today. And you can imagine those oxen pulling those wagons through that deep, heavy sand. And it was step by step that they came through what is referred to as Grapevine Pass at exit 13, and ultimately settling in this downtown area. The first company with, as I recall, 10 families was the Adair Company, later followed by the Covington Company, who settled here on May 7th, 1857. George Washington, Brigham Young insisted that he named this city, and he named it Washington City after President George Washington. Those early settlers were very resilient, and they went right to work on their mission, which was to grow cotton, almost to the extent that they didn't worry about planting the crops and the other things that would sustain their lives. They suffered tremendously for years and years and years, but they accomplished their mission, even building, as you see, a cotton factory, which is across the street. Later, some reinforcements were sent in to help continue with the mission. Part of the reason that the cotton mission was so important was that Brigham Young sensed an impending civil war and was worried about cotton availability and the ability for the communities across the Intermountain West here to remain viable. Additional families were then sent in, and that's why you recognize some of these local Washington names like Nielsen and Sandberg and Nyson and so forth. Probably the most influential individual was Robert Dockery Covington, and he was the first bishop of the area, kind of the leader of this expedition. And this is a picture here of his home, which is actually the oldest structure still standing and still being used in all of Washington County. And his leadership was vital in the settlement of Washington City. So it was quite a special moment when years ago the city was able to purchase that home. We've spent some time and effort in beautifying that and using that. We consider it a historical landmark, and we have some uses for that building. In fact, one of the most important uses that we have is our youth council. We feel like as we talk about our resilient and forward-thinking and resourceful heritage, we feel like our youth council, which is building the heritage for future generations, is entirely appropriate that they meet in that Covington home. So we have a great youth council, we have great advisors, and we appreciate all the service that they do as they build the heritage for future generations. We're happy when we were donated the property directly north of the Covington home. You can see sketches here that show we will be able to build a 25 parking stall and improve a maintenance building so that historic landmark of our Dixie heritage can be used and remain in our city's care. That's the past. Now to the present. I grew up here in the 80s. I miss the music. It's still around a little bit. When I was playing in the river and running through the fields and at the ball fields and those things with Brad and others, there were about 3,200 residents in this little cotton town. Today, we're over 30,000. We have grown by 10 times since my youth. 10 times larger. I graduated from Pineview High School in 1993, and one estimate I saw that we had 4,200 residents. So to put the growth of this often overlooked sleepy little cotton town in a forgotten corner of the state, to put in perspective the growth that we've experienced is we have about doubled each of the last 3 decades. I miss it. I miss going from downtown here into the Washington Fields. I miss the one, maybe the two, I guess technically 2-lane bridge. I miss the farm roads with potholes. I miss not knowing each of the 5, maybe 10 families that lived south of the river and having a relationship with each of them. But those days are long gone, as we see by this exponential growth that we've expanded. Now, if this map doesn't quite do it justice, or this graph doesn't, because you see 1980 here. If you extended this back to 1857, it would be quite flat. So you can see that for many, many years, people in Washington, we were more concerned with survival or surviving than thriving. And I think most of us, or a lot of us, were content to just be overlooked and not be worried about. But certainly, now that we have been found, and the uniqueness and the goodness and all that Washington has to offer, we have been found. And so in some ways, we are also thriving. So we're working hard to maintain that small town charm, that character, that feel that's been such a blessing to many of us. Now, we're not chasing growth. The dog has got off the chain. We're the kitten. As a youth, and this is a reference to one person in the audience that I promised I would give this reference to, is one of my neighbors as a youth. They had a police dog on a chain at their house named Zimbo. And I remember when that dog got off the chain, and I was literally the kitten. So this is not my first experience dealing with a serious situation. I survived that one. I'm confident we can survive again today. But I want to put in perspective a little bit of the work and also the growth just in terms of permits issued. So if you go back to 2006, we peaked, and this is through July through January, so they've compared, fiscal years 7 months at a time, so you could do some math to try to annualize it. But in 2006, we peaked out over a 7-month period at 504 permits. We dipped down in that recession, and then we've come back over the last however many years, and 2021 and 2022 have been identical with number of permits issued. Inspections, our hardworking building department, if you look at the same graph, take it back to maybe 2015, the number of inspections the city does on new construction has tripled. To year to date, we've conducted over 20,000 inspections on building permits. So those who are building, developing in Washington, there can be no doubt that Washington City is working very hard right along with you. Although I still say we are not chasing growth, but we do welcome those who want to be a part of this community to the extent that we can support and sustain you to be here. So with growth comes some casualties. And I might look for just a little bit of audience participation here. I know some people will know these answers, but can anyone tell me what this structure is, this building is here? Okay. Student special, fries with fry sauce.
Philly steak sandwiches.
Philly steak, yes, Faith, so good, so good. And the other one on your top right there. And what are some of those things that you could find there that you couldn't find anyplace else? Did I hear fabric? Penny candy, and some of those nuts and bolts downstairs in the hardware section. Okay. Who can tell me what bottom your left is? The boilers. And what did the old timers call it? The warm springs, yeah. And this one's a little more subtle and maybe a few things there, but what is it, Melody?
The canal, the dam.
Yeah, the canal. And those green fields, you know, my wife tells me that how are those that come after us going to know why they even call this area the fields? So as I point to these different landmarks, these different parts of our history, our heritage, to one extent or another, they've all been casualties of growth. You know, for a time, at one point in our history, Telegraph was called Old Highway 91, and it was the main thoroughfare that way. And then they moved it to I-15, and they cut right through the boilers. And then they expanded Telegraph before the city acquiring it. And as part of that expansion, we lost the burger place. And we lost Nison's. And we lost a big part of our history and our heritage and our identity. And it's been really difficult for me to accept that and to see that over these last few years. However, we still celebrate in our downtown. And we love to do that at our Veterans Park. We love things like veterans. We love our Cotton Day celebration. We love parades with old tractors. With lots of old tractors, even if you look closely, even old tractors with a car seat strapped to the fender, right? It doesn't get any more Washington than that, and I love it. We also love the 4th of July. And we love having pancake breakfast there, and we love having hamburgers for lunch there. And we love having races. But we don't love it when our cousins from St. George come over and win in those races. We like to win the races ourselves. But our Veterans Park is the heart of the city. It's a place to gather, and we welcome celebrations. We're grateful that the County Fair Parade is back in Washington. Going back to history, when Robert D. Covington and John D. Lee's homes were next door, that's actually where the first county fair occurred. We were settled in 1857, and St. George didn't get settled until 1861. But we love all of these things. But we realize that growth is inevitable, so we are keeping up with the growth. And one of the ways that we're keeping up with the growth is by improving our roads. One road that particularly needed help was our Main Street that goes from Telegraph north to I-15 under the freeway to Buena Vista Boulevard. There had been a history of flooding there. There weren't the sidewalks and improvements there. Our public works director, our city staff worked really hard, and you can see that that's now improved. In fact, if you drive that, you'll notice that it's concave. And landscape, the concave is so that when those big rains happen up, those monsoons in July, when they happen north of the freeway on the reserved property, it all kind of funnels down there. This is so that we can channel that water and help it go where it needs to go and not into people's homes. But it's beautiful, and it's a great part of our city. Another future project, as we're talking roads, is a future that's kind of imminent, is an I-15 widening and exit 11 interchange. So as we deal with the traffic here at exit 10, that has put pressure on our city as well, to where UDOT has pushed forward with a project that they will be advertising in the fall of 2022 and likely begin construction in 2023. Now, this isn't the exact rendering, that's just a rendering. It's still in the design phase. So I can tell you, though, that as a city, we are very conscientious of that. We want to do everything we can to calm the traffic and to minimize the impact on those local residents. But it's fair to say that we will have a freeway interchange onto our Main Street, which gets us back to our downtown. So you can see the spots where the burger place was and where Nison's was. And you can see a big block that has the old Nison's grocery store and vacant. This is actually where we do our tractor pulls. Back to the tractors, right? We do tractor pulls there. But we are very interested in recreating a walkable, an inviting, an attractive downtown where people can continue to gather. And so as a city, we are interested in facilitating private sector, public sector, whoever that may be, but we want a downtown. We want to recreate some of those places, some of those spots where a community can come together. And so we do have a bit of a design, a town square of sorts design for our portion. It won't look exactly like that. At some point, we're bursting at the seams of our city hall, so we'll expand that. But this gives you an idea of some of the intention that we have on our part. And just going back to that other square here, there is some movement that's happening at the old Quentin Nyson home in that corner and the Telegraph Towers project too. So we're hopeful that we can work with some private sector on getting that done. But frankly, the whole length of Telegraph from our western border at St. George to our eastern border at Hurricane is a high priority for this mayor and council. We have committed to, it is a main east-west corridor through our city, so we are committed to improving that to the extent we can with build-out, with landscaping, with beautification, and working with those who are building and developing, and there is some traction that's happening there. So that will be the old Highway 91, Telegraph, downtown. That is an initiative that you'll hear me talking of quite a bit, is how do we improve this area. You know, it's interesting in Washington, you have a lot of various communities, and it's a little bit like a puzzle that needs to be put together, but we need to have the center of the puzzle looking really nice. So we're committed to do that. Now let's get back to Robert Dockery Covington and the settling of Washington. One of the reasons they settled right here in this particular area, this little development is called Cottontown Village, right, in reference to them. But they settled here because of the close proximity to Adair Springs, to Mill Creek, Warm Springs, the Green Springs, and Virgin River. It's no secret that we have been in drought 16 of the last 20 years. It's also no secret that we rely entirely upon the Virgin River Basin as our source for water, whether that be from runoff or aquifer or whatever it may be. Now, as a city, we're working on a landscape conservation ordinance that will primarily affect new construction. We're promoting conservation and wise stewardship. We recognize that we can't necessarily just rely on a Lake Powell pipeline that may or may not come. And I have laid my fair share of sod over the years. I'm also willing to help remove sod. So if you call me, I will really come out there and help you with that. I think that at some point you'll also see some rebates that come from various government entities to help do that. But one of the things that I'm most excited about is a project that we finished recently. We did this in conjunction with the Washington County Water Conservancy District. We restored the boilers. You remember it was one of the casualties of growth. We recognized that. In fact, it had fallen into such disrepair that we had to put a fence around it because it was attractive for drug use. But we were able to design a park. And then one of the around this Warm Springs, we feel like it's educational so that people can learn about wise water stewardship. We've also incorporated into this natural spring a conservation garden to where if you look at these plants, they're all native plants for the desert. You can take your smartphone, you can click on it with your QR code, and it will tell you about the plant and how it would make sense in your yard. We've also branded it with the Washington County Water Conservancy District, so you see the boilers, a natural spring and conservation garden, works well with the Red Hills Desert Garden and St. George's Garden at Tonnequin Park. I've talked a little bit about the growth in the residential communities. We have more residential development coming. One thing that I am concerned with and that I'm looking for input and solutions is that missing middle. So I worry that my children will never be able to own a home here locally. How do they compete with retired California and retired Midwest who have a pension and equity from a prior home to be able to live here? So it's a big concern for me. And so we're looking at some different options on how we can do our part. Obviously, I'm a big believer in the private sector, but I want to just draw attention that there is a missing middle, and we can be strategic and intentional on how we provide housing options and ownership for future generations. I want to make just a quick plug for power. We bought our power utility in 1987 from Utah Power. At that time in 1987, peak load was about 3.7 megawatts. Fast forward to 2021, our peak load was 51.6 megawatts. Our total system load each of the last 2 years has increased 13%. Power is something that we've got to be aware of in addition to water going forward, because as we're seeing these coal plants retired and not necessarily replaced, it puts pressure on us to find base load power in addition to our renewables. We are a member of UAMPS, which helps with a lot of the power that we procure. I want to talk a little bit about some of our economic development goals. We want to do things that build our sales tax base. We want to build our property tax base, and we want to increase buying power through well-paying jobs. One of the areas where you'll see this happening most is at our exit 13. There's been a lot of activity up there recently. This is a flyover of the Terribles, of the Best Western Plus, of the Black Bear, and of the Maverick. And of course, you know that then this next slide is a little bit of an old picture, but you've also heard that we have the Sienna Hills Auto Mall, which is high-end, high-tech cars. And so we're looking forward to announcing the brands and the dealerships, but here are some of the brands that we anticipate might come. These are brands, I think most of them that you don't already see in this local area. This Grapevine Pass is a very attractive area. We've also, from all we're hearing, is that Steward Medical is still moving forward on the north side of the freeway. So we're excited about having an additional medical provider in terms of a hospital and the jobs that that will create. That whole area is just really vibrant and really exciting. Now with our growth, I've talked a little bit about permits. You can see that 98% of our permits are residential. So we are still heavy residential. And you know, each property pays property tax, and that's fine, but most of the property tax doesn't go to the city. A lot of your property tax you pay go to various taxing entities and school district. A small portion of that goes to the city, and our budget in our general fund, only 35% of that comes from property tax. The other 65% comes from sales tax revenue. So we need to continue to grow sales tax so that our residential growth doesn't put undue pressure on our ability to provide the services that we have. You can see the growth on that scale. You can see the growth in property tax on that scale. One thing that I'm really excited about is our economic development director has created an interactive map that's on our website. You can click on it. You can, on the green little houses, those are residential communities. You click on it, you see the plat map, you get information about subdivision, and the blue dots are commercial development. So we want to continue to improve our sales tax base as we continue to improve our property tax base. But again, and I hope this doesn't sound contradictory, I am not trying to attract residential growth. We're just trying to keep up with it. However, every project that comes forward, I am asking, for a long time we were just keeping up with growth. Now we're trying to be out in front of the growth. We want to be intentional. We want to be strategic. We want to make sure that we're following and updating our general plan. So I'm asking this question, and asking staff and council to ask this question at every level. How will your project, whether residential or commercial, how will it benefit Washington City residents? So we are concerned with design. We are concerned with layout. We're concerned with fit. We're also concerned with your right as a property owner to develop your property. One thing that's exciting as we build our identity, as we kind of come into our own as Washington City, is our partnership with school district. We now have 5 elementary schools. We have an intermediate school, we have a middle school, and we have a high school. And those are all kind of new, and I think those are great community building assets. So we appreciate the school district recognizing the growth on this side of the county and building. One of the things that having schools in your community does is it allows you to do fun things like recognize the Crimson Cliffs High School cheer squad when they win state. And it allows the mayor to call the chief of police and invite them to meet the cheer team at exit 13 and give them a ride down to the high school where they can be welcomed and congratulated on a win. Those are the types of things that make for a community. Let me tell you just a little bit about this Pierce Puck. We've had an old LaFrance fire engine that just became too expensive to repair and put into use. So as a conservative council, we were able to use fund balance, which is a fancy government word for savings, in order to go out and purchase a new fire engine for our fire department. Speaking of fire, we currently have 3 stations. You'll recognize these, but I want to point out Station 46 and 64 because we do this in partnership with the Hurricane Valley Fire Department. It's our Station 64, it's their Station 46. But as we partner with this station that's located on our border, it cuts the cost of the building in half, it cut the cost of the staffing in half, and it cut the cost of our new 107-foot Pierce Ascendant ladder truck in half, which is an apparatus that costs about $1 million. So I feel like as a council and mayor, that is wise stewardship of your taxpayer dollars, and we're excited to support the fire department. Let's transition to police for just a minute. I want to recognize Officer Bott, Officer Nash, Officer Scheme. These are your school resource officers. Our police department takes what they call a community-oriented policing approach. So they are in the schools. My kids, your kids, they know these police officers. In fact, it starts even before they get into the high schools. I've accompanied our police chief and our police officers in Washington Elementary and Riverside Elementary and others where they interact and build relationships with those students. They feel like that's a good way to build a relationship, build trust, and deter crime before it comes. At the high school, not only will you hear Officer Bott announce some of the basketball games, and he actually does a pretty good job there, he's the voice of the Mustangs, but you'll also see them teaching classes on law enforcement and also offering internships there. So we really love the community policing approach. Part of that community policing approach is reaching out to and being proactive with multifamily housing. So our police department is working directly with property managers and developers to establish a relationship to deter and prevent crime. And that's another great aspect of policing. On the other side of that is because of our location along I-15 from Southern California and the I-70 corridor, this is a thoroughfare for narcotics and drugs. So we have Officer Neighbor with Atticus, Officer Tanner with Zook, and we've confiscated recently over $3 million in drug, from fentanyl to methamphetamine to heroin, et cetera, et cetera. So our police officers are working really hard to keep us safe. They're working on the front end to prevent, and they're working on the back end to stop. Now, I do love quality of life issues as well, and this is one that's really exciting. This is our Canyon Park and our Hellhole Trailhead. If you haven't been out there, this park recently opened. It's got a really unique design. If you look down that steep area there between the ridges, that Hellhole Trail goes down. There's an offshoot for the Cottonwood Wash Trail up towards Coral Canyon, and then it goes straight down to the Virgin River Trail, which connects all the way out towards Hurricane, and then all the way to the exit 2 in St. George. So that Virgin River Trail is really exciting. I want to give you some updates on other parks that are happening that are going to be budgeted for this year. One of those is an expansion of our Dogtown Dog Park. And surprisingly, this is one of our most used parks. You can see phase 1 on the east side, and the phase 2 is kind of the turning the page on the book. It's kind of a mirror of phase 1, but we'll expand that and use that for those who have pets that they want to take there. Another exciting development in terms of parks is our Snob Kaib Trailhead. Snob Kaib is certainly a landmark. That's something that identifies Washington City. This is a trailhead that we're working with the BLM on RPMP to be able to build that. But there's a really neat trail. If you go up there as a kid, I was able to find arrowheads and rattlesnake sheds, and there's even an arrow that used to give direction for airplanes in the past. So that's an exciting development. This is a conceptual overall master plan. It's still just very much in the design phase, but if you look on the north part of that, there's a pump track and skate park that would be built on donated land. And we're excited to we are excited to continue to provide recreational activities down there. So let me go to, I went kind of fast, I want to slow down here for just a minute. If you're driving on Washington Fields Road, down from downtown Washington towards the fields, and just before you cross the bridge, you'll see Sullivan Park. You'll see a bison. You've seen these around our community. These bison represent our love, our partnership, our appreciation with our university. This one is particularly special to me, and I want to tell you a little bit of the backstory. It was originally commissioned by Brad Stapley. He gave the mission, he paid for the sponsorship, and then he said, "Let me know when it's done." Well, it was finished and unveiled in February, early February, as I recall, could be late January of 2019. As I understand, it was unveiled at a Dixie State University basketball game. He hadn't seen it prior to that. He was proud of it. He loved the large American flag draped across the strong shoulders of the bison. He loved the name American Trailblazer, a tribute to the American entrepreneur. He loved Washington City. He was a part of and he loved this chamber. He loved Dixie State University. Tragically, he passed away a week later and never got to see it displayed aside from that night on campus. Now, it was temporarily placed near the Dino Crossing office of Stapley Pharmacy, but had to be removed to accommodate some growth that was happening there. So it was about 2 years ago this month when I reached out to Kelly Charlton, who you met, and I inquired about the bison. And I knew that it was on her mind. Within days, miraculously, we obtained approvals for it to be placed at Sullivan Park, just in time to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of his passing, which we did with purple balloons and family and friends and loved ones. Now, this picture was taken about a week ago. It's been almost 3 years now, and loved ones placed a wreath around the Trailblazer's neck. And of course, it includes some purple ribbon. At this angle, you can see Snob Kaib in the background. Evan and Faith Stapley, Brad's parents, live at the foot of Snob Kaib, just on the other side of the Virgin River. We didn't realize it then, but after it was placed, we recognized that from the front porch of his parents' house is a perfect view of the American Trailblazer bison. Washington was always supposed to be its permanent home. Washington was always supposed to be a supporter of and a partner with Dixie State University. Every time you see this bison, let it be a symbol. Let it be a reminder that it is our job to pave the way for our children and create a path forward for our fellow travelers on our journey, just as Brad did. And to love and support the institutions and the city that Brad loved. We are blazing a trail, a road ahead for the Washington City we are becoming, for the identity we are building upon and creating today. We are a city that listens to and supports one another as residents. We are a community that values America and the freedoms the Constitution affords. We are a city that is proud to bear the name of our first president, George Washington. We are a community that values hard work and welcomes and encourages the entrepreneurial spirit. We are a city that values education, including the partnership with our local schools and our beloved local university. We are a city that values relationships with partners, with our neighboring cities, with the county, with the state, with the districts that we work with, and the private sector. We are a city and a community that is resilient, like our ancestors, and willing to tackle the similar but modern challenges of our day on the road ahead, just as they did at their time. And lastly, we are a community that believes the future shines bright above the red rocks of Washington City in the heart of Utah's Dixie.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, Washington City is in very different hands, not just for the mayor, but the city council as well. So just want to express our appreciation to the leadership of the city. We're excited for the growth, we're excited for the opportunities ahead. We're excited for the reflection of the past and the preservation of heritage. Because when we lose that, we lose our identity. So thank you for your focus on that. Thanks to each of you for being here today. Hopefully you learned something new that can inform you, help you as you plan for the future. We look forward to our last State of the City, which will be next week in Santa Clara. Again, you can find all details for the Chamber website. I'm going to invite you to take this time to mingle. I know we're right at our 1 o'clock hour, but take some time to mingle, get to know others around, and come ask the mayor any questions. Bring the tough ones to him as well. So thank you again for being here. We're seeing you.